Rocket 88 blasts off at WMNF's Tropical Heatwave May 10th. Florida's best rockabilly band returns to Heatwave, bringing their high octane to the Cuban Club Ballroom, where dancing is required. Catch their set as you get ready to go into orbit with the legendary Rocket 88, rockabilly at its best. Get your tickets now at WMNF.org.
About the moon, who care about the stars, who care about what's happening on Mercury and Mars.
Walks like an animal, talks like an animal, must be an animal. Come hear the animals, talking animals, talking animals. It walks like an animal, talks like an animal, must be an animal. Come hear the animals, talking animals, talking animals.
Welcome to Talking Animals. This is 88.5 WMNF Tampa. My name is Beverly. I'm sitting in for Duncan today. Duncan's on a break. He's gone to the Moon Tower Comedy Fest to get his funny bone tickled. Moon Tower Comedy Fest information can be found at, if you Google Moon Tower Comedy, you'll get the Austin Theater. Full lineup of extraordinary, jaw-dropping talent. His wife, Colleen, is the curator and host of the Moon Tower Comedy Fest in Austin. I'll be here for the next hour. We're going to be talking to Renee Wiesner-Brown from Ecosphere Restoration Institute, a nonprofit organization to restore the natural coastlines and shorelines. We'll be getting to that in a moment. I did want to let you know something kind of extraordinary I found out. SPCA of Tampa Bay will be on CBS's Extraordinary World with Jeff Corwin that will air locally on 10 Tampa Bay Saturday morning at 10:30 a.m. Streaming on Paramount, the SPCA Tampa Bay is offering half-off adoption fees. They can be found at spcatampabay.org. You can also go to their website, spcatampabay.org. And they also have a wildlife assistance program. You can find that on their website. They're located in Largo at 9099 130th Avenue North in Largo. Well, we're going to hear something from Tom Rush to get us in the mood for shoreline restoration. You're listening to Talking Animals.
Know my future, but the angels know my past. I rolled all around this great wide world to find a love to last. I'm weary from my wandering, Lord, I'm wounded in the war. I'll lay me low where the willows grow. Listen to that river song. River runs by my window. River runs by my door. River runs so sweet, I might never roam no more. Might never roam no more. Seen the stars falling on the mountain. I've seen the moon rising from the sea. I never ever saw a sight so sweet as that woman in my arms asleep. They say that honey heals the body. They say that music can soothe the soul. And I know the heart has reasons that reason cannot know. River runs by my window, river runs by my door. River runs so sweet, might never roam no more, might never roam no more. That river roams when she goes around the bend, just might roll round this great wide world, come on home again. River runs by my window, river runs by my door. River runs so sweet, might never roam no more. River runs so sweet, might never roam no more, might never roam no more.
Tom Rush, the River Song, and we're very delighted to introduce Renee Wiesner-Brown from the Ecosphere Restoration Institute, a nonprofit, and you are the Senior Director of Ecosphere. Please tell us some more about yourself, and we'll get into exactly what Ecosphere does.
Okay, good morning. Again, Renee Wiesner-Brown with the Ecosphere Restoration Institute. We're a nonprofit organization. We work throughout Tampa Bay area and really all of Florida on habitat restoration and living shorelines.
And what would you say is a living shoreline as opposed to what you might commonly see?
A living shoreline uses natural elements instead of hardened structures like seawalls. So they may include native plants, rock, like limestone rock, oyster bags, things like that help stabilize the shoreline and provide habitat value.
You mentioned oyster bags. Could you tell me a little bit exactly what an oyster bag is?
Sure. So oysters are natural to the system, and we're returning shells, oyster shells that we collect from restaurants that serve oysters, to the ecosystem to provide stabilization to the shorelines. And they're often put in bags, mesh bags, sometimes domes and other structures. And they provide stabilization of the shoreline, but also potentially habitat value. So if oyster larvae, if the habitat conditions are suitable for oyster larvae, they may establish themselves on the oyster bags and continue to grow and build that reef up.
So an oyster bag is not a living animal, but it does attract and potentially attracts oysters. I can remember, don't want to talk about myself, but as a child growing up here, oysters being everywhere, not necessarily being, edible oysters or harvestable oysters, but they were everywhere, and I don't think that's the case anymore. That they've been kind of diminished over time. Is there a particular reason, ecologically speaking, why we don't see the oyster flats and oyster beds like we used to in Tampa Bay?
Yeah, it could be habitat disturbance or water quality issues, but by bringing them back, you're kind of encouraging growth. And if habitat conditions are suitable, water quality and salinity, and they can regrow, they start building that reef, providing further structural stability and becoming part of the ecosystem. And they also provide water quality benefits by filtering that water.
Right. Helps keep Tampa Bay clean, helps make the environment better for other animals.
Yes.
So, you mentioned seawalls. I don't know if listeners would be aware that seawalls are kind of a destructive environmental structure. And if you don't mind explaining a little bit about why seawalls. I mean, you think if you're living on the water or a park facility, restaurant, whatever's on the water, that the seawalls maybe providing them some protection, but maybe not so much anymore. I think we're learning after Hurricane Helene and some other weather events.
Yes, so we understand the draw to have a seawall there for that protection, but they do degrade over time. There's scouring on the seaward side, and there's often erosion on the landward side from runoff. So really the seawall is strongest when it's first installed, and then it degrades and needs to be replaced, and they're generally quite expensive. So a living shoreline is typically less expensive, and it uses natural elements to protect the shoreline, but it also really enhances the habitat value as well. And we evaluated our living shorelines after the recent hurricanes, and they held up. So the rock components and the breakwaters really held up even despite 2 back-to-back hurricanes hitting our area.
Interesting. I know the living shoreline and the swamps. I talked to a fellow that was an expert or amateur expert on the green swamp and how important those are to protect the environment, to protect us humans from flooding. Could you elaborate on that a little bit exactly? Well, not exactly, but how that is incorporated into human lives and human development, that the importance of keeping some buffer space and swamp space and things for flooding. And
right. Well, wetlands play a significant role and have a lot of ecosystem services or values they provide, including reducing flooding by allowing absorption of water instead of runoff. And they also absorb nutrients so that what does run off is not as nutrient filled. So it's not, so that protects the coastal systems as well. So you're not loading them up with nutrients when you have wetlands that can help filter.
Is it sort of like a sponge or
yes,
something?
In some ways, sure.
Okay.
You can think of it that way.
Yeah. I know the limestone base that I guess Florida is on is much like a sponge, and then the swamps sort of catch it first, and then it goes down a little bit deeper. And eventually, up north of us, it comes out in springs.
Right. So it's all connected, but it just helps with that filtration.
Right. Speaking of springs, I wanted you to talk a little bit about the restoration projects you've been involved in. And what came to mind immediately was Eulalie, which is, a lot of people have heard of the restaurant, but there's a project that you've done. And is it on their grounds, literally in that property that Eulalie, the restaurant, owns, part of the Gonsmart Columbia family of restaurants? So what actually did you have to do at Eulalie, and what can people see if they wanted to check it out?
Yes, Eulalie Spring Restoration is probably our most visible project, or one of our most visible projects. So that area was restored in 2014. It was in a concrete pipe and highly grown over with weedy vegetation, and no one really knew there was a spring there. So we started working out there. This was before my time with Ecosphere, but I know Tom Reese, our founder, went out with a machete and cleared some of that original, overgrown vegetation to uncover the spring, and saw it, found it in a concrete pipe and a basin. So he really worked hard with getting funding and numerous partners to restore that area. And now it's a thriving ecosystem. It's beautiful. You can see it if you walk on the Riverwalk, and also if you dine at the restaurant, you can dine right next to the spring. Yeah. And it's beautiful. It attracts manatees, fish, other wildlife. It's just a beautiful spot.
Yeah, I saw that on the Ecosphere website, which I believe it's ecosphererestorationinstitute.org.
Yes.
Am I saying that correctly? An amazing amount of manatees around that area. If you want to talk a little bit about manatees, they're one of the favorites of the Florida community, and of course, of WMNF and Talking Animals, one of the more visible animals, I would say. So what's going on with the manatees and the spring? What's the attraction there?
Yeah, they'll come up into the spring to graze, and it's also shelter from, boating action and things that are more active on the river. So we just had an event at Eulalie. It's our annual fundraising event for Ecosphere, and the very next morning there was a manatee and a calf in the spring. So it's very rewarding. I think there's been over 35 different manatees observed in the spring, and they're not there all the time, but when they are there, it's extra special.
And I saw a huge number. That was on your website. Now I don't know if that kind of includes the Hillsborough River, or was it a grouping of quite a few manatees? I'm just curious about that. I know they're attracted to the somewhat warmer water that comes out from springs and other things like that.
They come up generally in the spring and summer when they're getting away from like the Manatee Viewing Center area and getting away from that warm water discharge. So they come on up, and again, it's a refuge from boating traffic and other busy things going on in the river, and they just kind of come up and graze. And
mm-hmm. And for those that might not be familiar with Eulalie, it's right off the riverfront and 275, which is almost an urban area as you can get for something as natural and beautiful as a living shoreline, I would say.
Yes, it's a incredibly beautiful spot, and even more so knowing you're in a very urban area.
Right. Now, just my amateur bit of knowledge, I would say the Hillsborough River is dotted with dozens, if not more, springs from tiny little bits of water small amounts of water percolating up to the big Sulphur Springs area. So just give listeners a little bit of an idea of what's going on with the springs coming into the Hillsborough River and the projects that you're working on that you would help make the spring a more natural environment, as opposed to the culvert running straight out to the river that nobody would even know is a spring. So
right. So springs are natural components where there's a opening in the limestone and water is coming up to the surface. So they're important, feeding the Hillsborough River and other rivers. The spring at Eulalie flows at something like 670,000 gallons a day. So it's
that's
significant
incredible
flow, yes. And that's a smaller spring.
Okay.
So, and we do tend to focus on springs. We have another project coming up in Palmacia. This is off of Bayshore Boulevard, so not the Hillsborough River, but that will be an important spring restoration as well. It is in need of restoration, and we have some local community members very interested in helping us raise the funds for that. And we have funding right now for design and permitting, and so then we'll be working on that phase of it and moving towards construction and restoration of that spring as well. So that should be a really nice feature right along Bayshore Boulevard.
Wow. Give me an idea of not exactly, but approximately where that would be on Bayshore and what people could expect as far as the project moves along, what they would be seeing.
It is right at Fred Ball Park and next to the Garden Club.
Okay. Yeah. So that's approximately Beta Bay and Bayshore in that area. So is there going to be the oyster beds being located there, or anything that as a passerby would see going on there?
I'm not sure about the oyster beds. Right now, it is an area that has kind of a brick or cinder block circle around the spring, and you have to kind of look down into it. And when we were there, they drained the spring to clean it out because there's a lot of muck in there. And there were things like picnic tables, there was a moped, there's all kinds of things that people had thrown into the spring over the years. So that a lot of those elements were removed with a crane, and then a lot of that muck was cleared out. So that was really first step, and really so that we could see what was feeding into the spring and, what was flowing out, where the water was moving in and where it was moving out. So we could start thinking about what makes sense from a restoration standpoint. So it won't look like Eulalie. It's not going to be this open, beautiful habitat, but it will be significantly enhanced. And, we're really looking forward to getting started on that. So I can tell you more about that once we have the design finished, but we will be restoring it, and there'll be some, native plants and other natural elements involved in that.
And again, we talked about this in our initial start of the conversation, but the influx of fresh water into the bay, people don't think about that, but they think of the bay as salt water. But the influx of fresh water is incredibly important to the habitat and to the animals and the estuary part of the bay. So.
Yes, so that influx of fresh water from springs and from rivers and rainwater is important. It provides that freshwater input, as you said, and there's some habitat diversity. So those brackish waters are significant for a variety of species, ecologically significant, commercially significant.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
I know the oyster harvesting is... I don't know if anybody's taking oysters out of Tampa Bay anymore, not for commercial purposes. But it used to be a thing. And crabs are kind of a favorite of mine. If you want to say a little bit about blue crabs, we'll kind of delve more into the animal aspect of your restoration projects. But I know blue crabs have maybe kind of made a comeback to Tampa Bay in some areas.
I believe so. I don't follow that, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I really focus on the kind of structural habitat components, and when you restore them, the diversity of diversity of wildlife, kind of.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you kind of you're at the forefront of what makes a habitat hospitable for an animal, and I get it. We're talking to Renee Wiesner-Brown, Senior Director of Habitat Restoration for Ecosphere. This is Talking Animals, 88.5 WMNF in Tampa. Renee has a doctorate in integrative biology from the University of South Florida and a master's in environmental management from Duke University. You're a founding board member of the Tampa Bay Conservancy and board member of the Executive Committee of the Florida Wildlife Federation. We're going to be talking about the Florida Wildlife Federation with Duncan's guests coming on next week. We'll get to that in a moment. But I was able to speak to some folks from the Tampa Bay Conservancy at New World's event 2 weeks ago at New World Brewery, and they describe themselves as kind of a watchdog or accountability group for the government institutes like the EPA and city and county organizations to kind of keep, raise a level of accountability to what they do. Is that something, as far as water quality and things like that and development, and how do y'all fit in with that?
Well, Tampa Bay Conservancy is a land trust, so we primarily are working to protect land.
Okay.
And we sometimes get involved in other issues, especially if it could impact some of our properties. So we had a proposed development adjacent to one of our preserves. So we played a role in making sure that the development has a minimal impact on the preserve. So that type of involvement. We also support land conservation initiatives. So when ELAP was up for funding renewal, we supported that. And when Pasco County was up for funding renewal for their environmental lands program, we did that. That type of support from a land conservation standpoint.
Okay. We talked a little bit about the springs along the Hillsborough River. What about some of the other projects that you've, in Tampa Bay, of course, what are some of the other projects that you're particularly notable that people might be able to check out? And I will mention that there's a map on your website that has little fish markers for where your projects are, and, if they're people can visit, check out and see what habitat restoration, shoreline restoration is all about and how important it is.
Yes, our website has the map and a list of projects with some descriptions. And see, we have Lowry Park Spring. It's something that we worked on, and it was restored quite a few years ago, but in recent years, last year, we had a few volunteer events out there just helping to enhance it because it had grown over since its restoration. So we removed a lot of invasive plants and any trash that had accumulated. And by the end of the volunteers time, which was really just a few hours by lunchtime, you could see the spring again. And so it was just really amazing to see that hard work paid off in such a short amount of time, and then we could see the spring again. And it's the park right outside the zoo, of course, and so it's widely visited. There were a lot of people enjoying it the very day we were there, and so that's a nice visible spot for people to see a spring and restoration. Palmacia Spring, as I mentioned, that will be another one visible. We have also done a living shoreline at Ignacio Haya Linear Park in Tampa, and that's on the Hillsborough River, so that's publicly accessible. And we'll be working on a living shoreline on the WFLA property on the Hillsborough River soon. So that will be. And
I believe WFLA, that's just south of 275. Is that where they're at, or?
It's kind of southwest of Eulalie, if you know where that is.
Okay, yes. That's the building's been there for a long time.
Yes. So we'll be doing
I wasn't sure if they were actually still there. Oh, that's very urban, a very urban project. Is there a spring or something that's flowing in there, or is it just the shoreline?
It's the shoreline. It's not a spring there, but we'll be adding some oyster bags there and some native plants to help stabilize that area.
Wow, that's cool. We were talking earlier. I don't know if folks... I certainly don't know exactly what a linear park is, if you want to describe that a little bit. And then we're going to go into the frog pond part of your projects, because that's fascinating to me.
Sure. A linear park is just a park that's configured in sort of a long fashion, kind of skinny fashion. And that's just the habitat that was available, or the land that was available for this park, but it's right along the river, so people can enjoy a stretch of river right there at that park.
Okay, so it would kind of be like buffered between the waterway and whatever else is going on the other side of the park. Okay.
Yes, and sometimes linear parks will be, lengthy, and they're just long stretches of a path, for example, along a river or other feature like that.
Yeah. I just want to reiterate how invasive, intrusive seawalls are, and that's something that you're kind of, in a way, a small way, maybe a big way, in combating the, which I think seawalls are important, but again, they're not environmentally friendly or making things so great for manatees. I've actually seen manatees come up almost to the shoreline, like you think they're going to crawl out, trying to get to plants on the shoreline. So, before I get too much off topic of exactly what I wanted to get to, Brazilian peppers are a pet peeve of certain people in the studio right now, and also the importance of mangroves and kind of like the mangrove versus Brazilian pepper. If you want to talk about that for a moment.
Sure. Brazilian pepper, yes, very difficult to remove, as you know, and just very easy to grow. So I worked for Hillsborough County Environmental Lands Program back a while ago, and there was a whole spray crew that focused on invasive removal with a heavy emphasis on Brazilian pepper. It's a lot of work to get them out once they're there, but it's important to get them out because they spread so readily. And, mangroves are protected and provide incredible habitat value, so we highly encourage their growth over Brazilian pepper. Right. And mangroves tend to do pretty well, at least right now. So a lot of times we don't even need to plant them. They just self-recruit. So if there's, when we do restore an area, there's, and the propagules for the mangroves float along, then they land in the soft shoreline that we've restored and establish and start growing. So that's different than if they come across a seawall.
Right.
So having those softer areas enable plants to establish themselves.
I like that term. Was it propagules? Is that the bean? The thing that looks like a bean to me? A big funky looking green bean, that's their seed pod.
Right, and they'll float along until conditions are right for it to kind of plant and establish itself.
Yeah.
So having a softened shoreline helps with that process for sure.
And for the wildlife lovers, the fishermen out there, mangroves are vital. They're the nursery. They're the actual nursery room for your baby fish to grow up in and grow into bigger fish. So keep that in mind when you're contemplating trimming your mangroves or getting into hot water with that, because they are protected, and you're allowed to trim them, I believe, but only to a certain level.
Right. There's a permit required, and you're allowed to trim to a certain level every.
Just be grateful for your mangroves. And once they get big, I've seen huge mangrove forests in the Keys, incredibly beautiful. I mean, if they're little and bushy, you don't appreciate how beautiful they can grow and what they can do. I want to let listeners know we're talking to Renee Wiesner Brown from the Ecosphere Restoration Institute. You're listening to 88.5 WMNF. This is Talking Animals. I'm not taking phone calls today. We're having a conversation, but you can text or email WMNF.org, DJ at WMNF.org, or you can send a text to 813-433-0885. We'll be back in a quick minute with more from Renee and the Ecosphere Restoration Institute. That's a band called Crab, and that was All Swans Look Alike. Just something kind of funny I found. We're talking to Renee Wiesner Brown from the Senior Director of Habitat Restoration for Ecosphere. We've got a lot of ground to cover, but I'm so pleased that you're able to come in today and make the time. Again, I'm not taking phone calls, but you can email us at dj@wmnf.org or text a message at 433-0885. I did get a listener that said there's a tiny little spring off of Nebraska Avenue. I don't know if is there any, I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. Is there any like documentation or does your work involve pinning where these springs are located, no matter how tiny they are, or that kind of thing. Is that something that you could, I mean, if somebody wanted to find out if they were building on property, if they purchased property and there's a big wet spot or pond in their yard, if it was spring fed, is there way to find out, verify that?
Yes, there are spring resources. So there's database of known and maps of known springs. I will say for Eulalie, we had to go back to 1888 to find a survey that had the spring listed on it, and it was a hand-drawn survey from 1888. So there wasn't documentation, to my knowledge, other than that for Eulalie Spring. So sometimes they're not all mapped, but those that are known are mapped, and based on the amount of water flowing out of them, they're categorized. So smaller springs are important, and they're mapped as such.
Right.
There could be some that haven't been mapped yet, I suppose.
Yeah. No, I was just curious. Ann wrote in and said there was a tiny spring up from Nebraska Avenue off a private seawall. So that's interesting to me, having lived in the area most of my life, that they're just countless little bubbles of water coming up in places that you might not realize is a spring, and then how that contributes to the river flow and subsequently the wildlife involved.
Yes, with the limestone substrate, it's karst topography, very interesting, and there's holes in it, so the aquifer is able to, water comes up through that.
Right,
so,
right.
Yeah, very interesting, and certainly it's all connected and part of the river flow.
Let's see. Let's turn our attention to community involvement. You mentioned that you had recently had a fundraiser, and do you do something like that annually or more frequently?
We do have an annual fundraiser. We started it 2 years ago, and Eulalie, the restaurant, is very generous in supporting that. So we have it at Eulalie so people can see the spring, and we highlight the spring, and we'll sometimes give a guided walk along the spring talking about the different components and what went into the restoration. And then, of course, we enjoy Eulalie's wonderful food and ambiance. We're usually in the back of the restaurant in their beer garden, and the staff and the food is wonderful. And it's a nice time to come together with supporters of Ecosphere and just have some fun and support the organization. We also have volunteer work days periodically to maintain some of our sites, like Eulalie and also Lowry Park Spring. And we have a few coming up, not scheduled yet, but planning for May, probably May 3rd at possibly Ignacio Haya Linear Park that I mentioned, and then also Stewart Middle School. So those will be in May.
Okay. And where can people find out about the projects, or if they wanted to contact you or find out exactly? A lot of great information on your website, I'll say, but how can they find that? Where would they look?
Yes, they'll be posted on our website. We also post them on our social media. So we have a Facebook page, Ecosphere Restoration.
How important is
Institute,
social media these days?
And Instagram. So that's all on there. And we also use Eventbrite. So some people subscribe to our or follow us on Eventbrite, and that way they can see whenever we have an event. And we've had some new volunteers come through that, so that's been valuable for us as well.
And that is Ecosphere Restoration Institute.org.
Yes,
is that
is
where
the
they
website.
Can find that? Okay. Let's talk about Renee for a moment. You just returned from a trip to Alaska, and you were doing a speaking engagement there.
Yes, I was invited to speak at the University of Alaska in Anchorage. So I did that and met with some graduate students and some professors as well to talk about our work here with Ecosphere and learn from them as well. So that was exciting. And while I was there, I spent a few extra days so that I could explore some of Alaska.
Sure. Was that your first visit there?
Second. I had been there to Southeast Alaska on a cruise last year. So but this was my first time to Anchorage in that area.
Yeah. Just a little taste of what it was like there.
It was beautiful. The area had been enjoying some warmer weather, but while I was there, it snowed. So I was actually really excited about that because I don't see a lot of snow. So very big white flakes coming down. I took a city tour, and then I went out to some surrounding areas to look at glaciers and saw the Cook Inlet and Turnagain Arm and a marsh that's very popular for birding. Arctic terns are often there, so that's exciting. I didn't see them, but knowing that they're there and that's habitat for them was important. And then we took a drive to Valdez, so that was about a 6-hour drive, but I really wanted to see it for its environmental and ecological significance. So that was great to see, that area, and it's a beautiful area with a very small, quaint town, and the drive there is just spectacular. So driving through canyons and just vast areas of natural area and open space. I think all human beings need that exposure to natural wild spaces, and unfortunately in Tampa it's getting you have to make a bit of an effort in Florida, at least in this area, to find those spaces these days. I just thought I'd mention that, but they're well worth seeking out. On the Ecosphere website, like I said, there's a little map with the fish on it that you can find your projects. Is there something else you want to say before we say goodbye, and how much I appreciate you being here today? Oh, thank you. I agree with you. It is important for people to get out and enjoy natural areas. There's like a relief that comes from that. You feel calm and more at peace, and enjoy some natural habitats, wildlife. I would promote visiting ELAP sites, Hillsborough County Environmental Lands and Pasco County Environmental Lands, and Tampa Bay Conservancy properties and other natural areas, City Tampa parks and so on. So, and as you mentioned, Ecosphere's projects are listed, so we would love to have you visit those sites and let us know what you think. Yeah,
I was going to mention before we say goodbye, Pinellas County is offering an opportunity for environmental lovers, nature lovers, to participate in shoreline restoration at Felipe Park. That's this Saturday, April 19th. I could not find a website to direct people to, because you do need to pre-register, but if that's something that catches your attention, check it out. It'll be well worth it. The like-minded people getting knee-deep in the mud and putting up those structures that help the shoreline restore. Thank you so much for being here, Renee. Again, Renee Wiesner-Brown, Ecosphere Restoration Institute. You've been listening to Talking Animals. We're here a little bit of comedy in honor of Duncan and the Moon Tower Comedy Festival. And we'll be right back with some more announcements.
I love the bomb-sniffing dog with the bulletproof vest. He's my favorite piece of TSA security. Because I fly every week. I see this dog every week. And I wonder sometimes, I'm like, is it a bomb-sniffing dog? Or is it ever just a dog? You know? Because I have 2 pets at home, and they have to see the vet a lot. And I'm like, how many bomb-sniffing dogs can there be? Is there ever a day when they show up and someone's like, hey, where's the dog? Oh, I'm like, oh, he's getting his teeth cleaned today. He ain't coming in. And then some other guy's like, well, what are we going to do? And they're like, I guess we're just not going to have a bomb-sniffing dog. And then like a third guy's like, I got a dog. You want to just put the vest on this dog? I think they do that way more than we think. I honestly do, because I fly every week, and at JFK they make you go 2 by 2 with a stranger if you fly by yourself, which I do a lot. And you got to go 2 by 2 and you walk by the dog. And this one time I went, and the dog barked at the dude in front of me. It was a big deal. Just, "Arr, arr, arr, arr." And everyone's like, ho, ho, ho! We got one. And then the dude with the leash was like, what? No, go ahead. You're good. And everyone's like, oh my God, that's just a dog. That wasn't a special dog at all. That guy had jerky in his backpack, and the entire operation came crumbling down. We're all screwed.
This is Austin with Chapters Health System with a public service announcement. Do you have a plan for your pet if you get a serious illness? Chapters Health System helps every pet-owning patient and family ensure their pet is well cared for through the Pet Peace of Mind program. From dog walking to vet services, with Pet Peace of Mind, Chapters Health has you covered. For more information, go to chaptershealth.org/pet-peace-of-mind.
Again, this is Talking Animals, 88.5 WMNF Tampa. Quick announcement. Duncan's guest next week will be, juggling my notes here, from some people affiliated with the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission that will be evaluating the state rules that address the use of wildlife trapping. Duncan's guests will be Kate McFall, the Florida State Director for the Humane World for Animals, formerly the Humane Society USA, and Catherine McGill, longtime wildlife rehabber and provider of wildlife control services. They're both directly involved with the Florida Wildlife Conservation Commission, and that will be evaluating the trapping rules. It sounds like a vital topic, not something I would have thought was still going on in the modern world, but that will be Duncan's guest next week. I think that's April 23rd. Again, you can find Duncan's information. His website is amazing, talkinganimals.net. Very searchable, all kinds of topics from pet behavior to wildlife conservation and everything you can think of in between. He's talked to Jane Goodall. Check out the website for yourself. It's fascinating. We're going to hear a little bit more music and get ready for NPR News at 12:01.
Well, I saw my baby walking with another man today. Yes, I saw my baby walking with another man today. Now when I asked her what's the matter, this is what I heard her say. See you later, alligator. See you later, alligator. Go after wild crocodile. See you later, alligator. See you later, alligator. Go after wild crocodile. Don't you know you're in my way now? Can't you see you cramp my style? Then I thought of what you told me. Then it made me lose my head. Well, when I thought of what you told me, then it made me lose my head. Well, when she asked me what's the matter, reminded her of what she said. See you later, alligator. See you later, alligator. After wild crocodile. After wild crocodile. See you later, alligator. See you later, alligator. Well, after wild crocodile. After wild crocodile. Don't you know you're in my way now? Don't you know you're in my way now? Well, can't you see you cramp my style? Can't you see you cramp my style? Said, wait a minute, gator. I know you mean it just for play. I said, wait a minute, gator. I know you mean it just for play. But don't you know you really hurt me? And this is all I have to say. See you later, alligator. See you later, alligator. Well, after wild crocodile. After wild crocodile. See you later, alligator. See you later, alligator. Well, after wild crocodile. After wild crocodile. Don't you know you're in my way now? Don't you know you're in my way now? Can't you see you cramp my style?
Bill Haley, we did get around to talking about alligators. That's a topic for another time, I suppose. Certainly part of the Florida environment. We're very pleased to have Renee Wiesner-Brown here, Senior Director of Habitat Restoration for Ecosphere. You can find her complete interview and a complete archive of Talking Animals guests going back for years at WMNF.org. Just go to the programming tab and look for the time slot, which is Wednesday, 11 to noon. Thank you so much for coming in, Renee. And as we get closer to NPR time, I wanted to mention MacDill 48. Ecosphere was not directly involved with MacDill 48, but it is Tampa's newest park. It's located at 6415 MacDill Avenue. You can find out information on the City of Tampa's website. It's a restored area, not quite down to the Air Force Base, but pretty close to the Air Force Base down MacDill Avenue. So that's 6415 South MacDill Avenue. MacDill 48 is the name of the park. I've heard it's beautiful. I need to check it out. Duncan will be back next week, and his guest will be some activists that will be working with the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. They will be evaluating the state rules that address the use of wildlife traps. My name's Beverly. I've been sitting in for Duncan today. My extreme pleasure. I'm sorry I didn't get to any phone calls. Just a lot to cover in the studio. Let's see what else we can get to. Little PSA for you.
WMNF and Living Mirror Playback Theater will host a monthly community talkback and improv show live here in the WMNF studios, 7 p.m. on the fourth Friday of every month. The event will be based on our monthly mission calendar, covering topics such as economic justice, environmental issues, and more. We invite community activists and interested listeners. Compelling evening of community sharing and improv theater, but space in our studio is limited, so go online to WMNF.org/events to reserve your seat.
I wanted to mention there is a complete listing of Earth Day events at rootsandshoots.org. That is Jane Goodall's foundation. And if you're interested in what's going on locally, WMNF will be at Learning Gate Academy in Lutz on, I believe it's next weekend. I should have checked that out. But Earth Day is this coming Tuesday, April 22nd. I'm going to leave you with some Florence and the Machine. This is Rabbit Heart. You've been tuned to 88.5 WMNF Tampa.